my friends. Francisco Ricardo. All right. What do I have for you today? We're back on the roof of our building, our production building. It's one of my favorite offices. I have one downstairs, obviously, but where I really prefer to be is up here. I mean, look, if you're going to come to California, this is kind of what you want, You should see the sun that way. It's pretty impressive. So, yesterday, I was thinking about the use of time, which I spoke a little bit about. And then today, downstairs in the library, I was looking at some of the books that I really appreciate that have had powerful impact, at least an influence in my thinking, which over the many years has not been small. And one of them is really anything having to do with this man here, Edgar Cayce. Now, Edgar Cayce lived primarily in Virginia. He was, I think, originally from West Virginia. And he was born before 1900, and he died in 1945. And if you don't know anything about Edgar Cayce, whatever degree of skepticism you might want to bring to your own thinking about, what happens in the other world, will certainly stand for a kind of an interesting revision once you read the kind of things that Edgar Cayce did. Basically, he was known as the sleeping prophet. So he was somebody who, even though he was learning disabled almost student, he didn't do well in school. Nonetheless, he was very religious. And because he had trouble with school, one day, what he did is he had a book that he had to learn, and he had no way of getting through this for the next day's exam. Okay. So what he did is he grabbed the book and he put it in his bed, and he put the pillow on top, and he slept on it. When he woke up the next day, strangely enough, he actually remembered everything in the book, right down to the page number where everything was. Now, I don't know about you, I've got a pretty good memory, and I'm not ashamed to say I've actually tried this trick many times, and all I wake up with is, maybe some weird dreams and a little bit of a neck ache. It's not something that most of us can really accomplish. You can't really do it. So that's Edgar Cayce for you. And so he discovers he has this amazing talent. This talent for being able to tell something about the life of another individual, given only the person's name and the city that they happen to be in at the moment. Okay? And so he would go to sleep, take a kind of a prayerful moment to go to sleep, and then he would have a woman named, I think her name was Gladys Turner, who worked as a stenographer. And we're talking about the 20s, 30s, and 40s, okay, primarily. He died in 1945, as I say. And then she would read things like, okay, you will now give us information about this particular person, okay? Joe, Sally, Bob, Bananas in Brooklyn, New York. Go. And then he would be like, yes, we have the body. Sometimes it'd be a few minutes of silence. And then he would be like, yeah, we have the body here. The body is currently experiencing some degree of regret in its spirit, as well as spinal subluxations in the areas of lumbar 2, 3, and 4, let's just say in the spine. Also, there is some hepatotoxicity, let's say in the liver, and that would require some cleaning out through a sort of detoxification program. And finally, clarification through prayer of the difficulties that the entity, it was always called the entity has been going through. And they would actually verify this over time. It was like verified, go back and sort of see it. And they could see that the person really, in fact, had these problems, etc. That's one of the reasons they found out, because people would write these letters and they would ask Edgar Cayce's people to look into them. And occasionally they'd give a trick name, of someone in a city, and then the Edgar Cayce source that went through Edgar Cayce's channel would say, we can't find that person, we can't find the body. And then one time over the many years, Edgar Cayce was asked about the previous life of this person. You will tell all that you know about so-and-so, particularly given previous lives, because in a previous moment somebody had decided to ask and sent in a letter and asked about whether reincarnation is real. Now, Edgar Cayce was a real strong Bible believer, and the Bible doesn't really mention reincarnation, doesn't really get into that kind of thing. So, as you know, the idea of sort of Christian belief of life is that, you go through from the moment of birth until your moment of death. At the moment of death, you go through a judgment as to whether you will go to heaven or you will go to hell, or in some cases, rare cases, we have this purgatory concept. But that doesn't mean you come back again, even though, in the New Testament, Jesus Christ dies and then he comes back again, right? But strangely enough, even though he was so religious, the source that was channeling through Edgar Cayce says, yeah, there's reincarnation, there's many lives. And sometimes many, many lives. The oldest human being was the first soul, the first one to incarnate from spirit into the body, and that was Jesus, who was really originally Adam. It was really mind-blowing. And I think there were something like 33 incarnations until he got to be Jesus Christ, who died at the age of 33. Okay, now you may not believe this, just bear with me on this, right? The piece is we can be skeptical about this, but what makes the story for me incredible is that through the 14,000 readings that Edgar Cayce gave while in a state of sleep, trance sort of sleep, these cases referred to people who were real in different cities wherever they were, so that we can discount whatever it is we want to believe about some of the things that source that was channeling itself through Cayce might have said. But how can we discount then the strong evidence about the physical conditions that the person that he's telling you something about, how can we discount that when it's actually clearly medically true? So, pretty unbelievable. In any case, if you can find anything, so I think at some point he moved his family to Virginia Beach. He had a kind of a feeling or something that they should go, and then they moved there. And then his kind of a company, I guess, started that had really had a handle on his work and his readings, etc. And it was called, and it still is called, the ARE, the Association for Research and Enlightenment. And the ARE is a really humble organization. They don't have any political or any religious or anything else. There's no need to be suspicious of them or anything. One of the things they do is they make books about Edgar Cayce. This is one that I happen to have, The Power of Your Mind. I have many books about Edgar Cayce. And so there's the ARE logo down at the bottom. You can see it says ARE Press, Association for Research and Enlightenment. And so a lot of the books will be question and answer, things that came directly out of the readings. And I thought that in these pretty interesting times, it'd be worth to read something like this. What I have to kind of tell you is the most important piece about Edgar Cayce, at least for me, is that there isn't a strong religious undertone, but there's a powerful spiritual directive, and that somehow goes with the idea that you should understand your intentions in being here and being in this material world and walking this earth. So one of the questions in a reading, if you care for the readings that they gave, this is person number 202, the fourth reading for that person it was. What should I do to improve my mental condition in regards to ailments? That was the question. So they read it to Cayce, who was asleep. He answers. And I thought this was a very interesting answer. Think in a wholly constructive manner, that is, as this. There is creative in the system that which may meet the needs of the physical body in its everyday activity, and sufficient to store energy for the resuscitation of used forces. Make that known in self. As the mind accepts a condition as being positive, it acts upon that condition. Yet when negative forces are continually set before self, and expected, and the expectancy is such as to make the reaction of such a nature to destroy, then negative forces become the more active. Necessary then that the body, any body, keep the near normal of a constructive building in the mind, for mind is the builder. Mind is the builder. Doesn't sound to me like that's kind of locked up with any specific religious, ideological, theological, fanatical way of thinking. But in these days where we seem to have a little bit more time than we expected we'd have, why don't we imagine that time can be filled up with things that will eventually be realized in the three-dimensional world through our own mind. If mind is the builder, whatever you're thinking now, that's what you're building. And I think that's the creative act in which, voluntarily or otherwise, we are all presently, and for an indefinite period of time, engaged. I thought that was worth thinking about. So I'll share it. My friends, Francisco Ricardo. Mind is the builder. What are you building? Till next time.